Okay, ready when you are.
So first of all, thanks for your time.
All right.
I'd like to start from the beginning. What was the reason for you to make music in the first place? How did you came into music?
In the beginning, it was back 1964, and one of the first names that we called ourselves was the Jazzy Acts, and that's because our first love was jazz. Now, mind you, we were very young. I was only 14 years old, and my brother 13, and all the other guys. But we grew up on jazz. My father was a boxer, and he was a top 10 featherweight. He fought famous fighters like Sandy Sattler and all the boxers during that time. But Miles Davis also wanted to box. And he used to come over to where my father would train at, and he wanted to get into the ring with my father and train. So they fooled around a little bit, but Miles had to make sure he didn't get busted in the lip because he's a trumpet player. Of course, Miles went on to be a very, very famous trumpet player. Thelonious Monk became my godfather because in that area, Thelonious Monk lived right downstairs from my father. When I was born, he became my godfather. So music was kind of around the house at the time. And so we moved to Jersey City, and because I was from Youngstown, Ohio. Okay, then I moved to Jersey City, and we formed the Jazzy Acts, and with George Brown, Dennis Thomas, Ricky West, Spike Mickens. All these guys have passed now. The original members that are still living is myself, my brother, Ronald Cully Spell, George Brown, Dennis D.T. Thomas. So we started playing jazz and listened to a lot of the jazz artists. And there used to be a place in Jersey City called the Coffee House. And every Sunday they would have jazz. And people like Pharoah Sanders and McCoy Tyner and a few other jazz musicians would come. And they would play every Sunday. And then that night we would kind of do our thing as young guys, you know. Then we started to get more involved with the R&B side. And that's when Charles Smith came to us, and he was working, and George Brown and Ricky West was working with an organization called the Soul Town Review. Now, the Soul Town Review was like a little Motown in Jersey. And we would have to learn the hits at that time of the Temptations, the Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Diana Ross, and we became the backup band. So we used to back up 18 different groups. We have to learn all their songs, and we were the backup band. And what was happening was we were creating a sound that became a mixture of the jazz and the R&B, which became the earlier sound of Kool and the Gang. We left that organization, and we were working in a club in Newark, New Jersey, and they knew us, the master of ceremonies knew us as being the Soul Town Band. And then one night we came into the club, and he came up with this idea, and it had Kool and the Flames. Now, he had Kool like a big ice cube, and he had flames and fire, and the cube was melting, putting out the fire. Anyway, long story short, we became Kool and the Flames. Okay. We met a manager, our first manager, by the name of Gene Red, who had been working with Quincy Jones and James Brown. And at the time, we said, well, we don't want to keep the name Kool and the Flames because you had James Brown and the Famous Flames. So we didn't want to have any problems with the Godfather. So we thought of many names to call ourselves. Then we said, you know what? And I think Gene Red, the one that said this, why don't you just call it Kool and the Gang? You got a street sound, somewhat sophisticated because of the jazz side. You're talking about 15 years old now. You're a young band just starting, okay? And I think it would be hip. And that's how we became Kool and the Gang. First record came out in 1969, was a top 40 hit, and that was the beginning of a up and down the slopey slopes of the music business.
Cool. Great.
27.
Like you said, you started your career as you became your first number one hit in '69. You started
Well,
career-
top 40.
top 40,
Yeah.
69 in the 70s. What do you think? Is it easier to start a career in the 70s or is it easier today?
Well, it was easier for us to start in the 70s. Really, we started in the 60s, but it wasn't really the success didn't start until the 70s. Of course, the record Kool and the Gang did well in '69, and then we went on to record albums in the '70s. Not only that the single was called Kool and the Gang, the album was called Kool and the Gang, and the group was everything was like Kool and the Gang, and we had songs like Breezing Soul and Chocolate Buttermilk and Sea of Tranquility and all those type of, which was mainly instrumental songs. We also covered a song from the Temptations called Since I Lost My Baby. We did an instrumental version of that. So in the early '70s, we were doing some cover songs and a lot of original material. We did a song from the Delphonics, Did Not Blow Your Mind, songs like that. And it was the beginning, some of the hits were territorial, like Funky Man and Funky Granny was like hits in New York, Washington, Philadelphia, mainly East Coast. And then the name started to pick up and it started to spread across the country. Then we got our very first, I guess, big hit of the '70s was Funky Stuff. Top 10 pop. Then came Jungle Boogie, number 1 pop, R&B. And then came Hollywood Swingin', number 1. That was the mid '70s. So now we were rolling. Then Summer Madness. That was on a Light of Worlds album. And that was the first song and the first movie that Sylvester Stallone did, Rocky. They played Summer Madness. That was our first song in the music soundtrack. Of course, after that came Open Sesame with the Bee Gees, Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta, one of the biggest records in the history, until Michael Jackson came along with Thriller, knocked us out of the box.
Cool. So, number one hits in the 70s. Is it important to gain the charts to top it number one for a musician, or is it just nice?
Well, I mean, it's nice. It was important, I guess, from a record company perspective, because, they're in the business to sell records. Mm-hmm. We were still, when you look at the '70s, we were still young guys, young teenagers. I mean, you're talking about '69, just graduated out of high school, 18, 19 years old. And then most of the '70s, I was in my 20s. And, we had those type of records, as young adults, I guess you can say. Yeah.
Do the charts?
I would say they do in some cases. But the music business has changed so much, especially in America. They want to hear the hits, or they play the hits of the '70s and the '80s. Kind of hard for them to play something new. They listen to the new boys bands or the Chris Browns or the Jay-Z's or, which I don't have a problem with. It's just that now the charts, it's kind of hard to get on the charts, and I speak to other groups, be it Chicago, Earth, Wind & Fire, we all have the same problems, unless all of a sudden you get this one big record that happens for everybody, like Santana with Wyclef and those guys, and Rob Thomas Santana had that big record, sold about 15 million records. But other than that, the charts have been a little difficult. But, we work. And that's the good thing about it. Work based on what we've done in the past. Now, don't get me wrong. We would like to have another #1 record. But the industry's changed so much, Maybe we'll get one, maybe not. But we're working. We got another record coming out this year. We did a record with Nile Rodgers called I Want to Dance. And also the lead singer of Color Me Bad, Brian Abrams. So we're still working on different projects, Hopefully we'll get that big one again.
Cool. Like you've obviously been in this business for so long time, and when you started your career, the vinyl was very popular, and then in the 80s, 90s came the CD, and then the digital downloads in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best medium for you? What do you prefer?
Well, the best was the 70s, vinyl. Vinyl and CDs. CDs were great, and vinyl. The downloading thing, I have to be honest with you, I'm not into, but so much. I know it's more the young audience, I can ask my son about downloading. They know all about that. I'm old school. I did it the old way, Vinyl, CD, tour, concerts, album covers, CD jackets, not digital computer, iTunes, this tune, my tune, his tune, their tune. And that's not what I'm about, But I know that's where the business is at today, so I respect that.
Cool. You're also producing several artists, I think. Can you tell us a little bit what's the difference between the role of a producer and the role of a musician?
Well, on the producing side, as a group, my brother, Ronald Calise, and George Brown handled most of that on the production side. But I have been involved in discovering young acts over the last 20 years. One was Color Me Bad. And we signed them to Giant Records. We had the big record with I Want to Sex You Up. And my brother discovered the Fugees, Lauryn Hill, Wyclef. And, of course, they had a very big, successful career. And still having it. Wyclef is still out there. Lauryn Hill is still trying to do something from what I'm hearing. Teddy Riley, who, of course, produced a lot of hits. He got something come out on the new Michael Jackson unrecorded material that Teddy Riley did. Teddy used to come around and wanted to play keyboards, so he was too short to just get up on the chair to get up on top and to play the keyboards. But Teddy Riley, Pink, my cousin, Adele Bayan, and discovered Pink. She was with another group, and we kind of pulled her out of that group and put her with LaFace Records, So, and most recently with my partner, Khalid, we started a company called Kool Management, and we're now involved with Aura, a new young and up and coming artist here in the gas territories. No Angels we're working with, and there'll be other artists that we'll be working with. So to answer your question, though, as an artist, I see things a certain way that I would like to happen as an artist, and then as a manager on the business side, there's certain ways things are done on the business side. So I have to wear two hats here and say, well, this is what I want as an artist, but I know as a businessman that only certain things can happen a certain way. So you have to kind of balance it out. That's why I have partners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it sometimes that you work with musicians then and they have another side of you where you think, okay, and if I would be a musician, I would agree with them, but I'm now a manager and
yeah, I think I have something to offer, as a musician, and then as an artist, and as dealing with the other side of the fence in terms of records or record company, because I know the things that I would want or wanted at the time as an artist, and then dealing with a record company, being on that side of the fence of some of the reasons why they can do this and they can do that, and they can't do this and you can't do that. So I kind of understand that, But as an artist, you're saying, hey, I don't care. They should be doing this for me. They should be doing that for me. I'm the artist. But on the other side, I kind of understand both sides of the fence now, which is a good thing.
Questions. Do you think that some kind of commercial success is something which can be planned in the business till a certain degree, or is it all luck?
Well, I think that to a degree, commercial success is something that can be planned in terms of writers, producers, record company, finding the right record for the artist. They feel commercially. For instance, I might not feel that commercially, I don't like that record. But then the record company says, but commercially, this record with this producer, with this marketing program, can make the difference. Now, you might not personally like the record, but then that can turn around and be your biggest record. So to answer your question, I think that plays a part. And then the other thing is that you want to be creative. You want to kind of do what you do. A good case in point, as musicians growing up, we got kind of pigeonholed in terms of what we can do. If you're R&B, that's all you can do. If you're jazz, that's all you can do. But we always felt we're musicians. So if we want to do a song that have a country and western twang to it, you mean to tell me because I'm R&B I can't do a country and western song? Or if I have a song and my guitarist can rock out, you mean to tell me I can't do rock and roll because I'm R&B? Or vice versa, whatever. That's the part of the industry that, to me, music is music. Let the people make the decision. Record companies and media people try to pigeonhole you into what they think you should be. Why? For commercial reasons. It's just like selling Burger Kings and McDonald's. You sell them for a certain reason, because people are going to buy Burger Kings and people are going to buy McDonald's. If you come up with John Ronald, what's that? It's not commercial. That's the only problem I have with the industry, is that we tend to be too pigeonholed into one category.
Last question. Can you remember your first ever live gig you played? The first time you went on stage?
Well, I can answer that in two ways. The first live gig was playing in a nightclub with the whole Soul Town band I mentioned earlier, in terms of a live gig and playing, and then also the coffee house where we were doing the jazz. But the first live so-called professional gig, after having a hit record, Kool in the Gang, was at the Apollo Theater in New York, where the critics are very serious critics. You come to the Apollo, you better have your act together. So we had the record, so we, because New York City, Jersey City, right through the Holland Tunnel. So we went over to New York, we got this record. Said, oh yeah, I think we got it all together. And it was this group called Willie Feaster and the Mighty Magnificents. And they had the act together. They had the horns spinning around, and the big band, and then they had singers with them as well. And we just had the little Kool Gang record, and they taught us a lesson. They ran us back to Jersey City, and we said, hey, this is more than just about standing up playing and having a hit record. This is about a career. You got to work hard. You have to have perform a certain way. You have to study your craft. We said this was like, we had a hit record, but this was just only the beginning. We didn't know, almost 20, 30 years later, what we was up against. But here we are. We're still here, and we're still live and kicking.
Thank you very much.